He wasn't a CEO, he wasn't an engineer, he didn't even work there. He was just the janitor's son. But when a $200 million tech crisis brought the company to its knees, this quiet black teenager stood up, grabbed a marker, and shocked an entire boardroom. What he did next. No one was prepared for it. At 17, Caleb Johnson was invisible, not because he lacked potential, but because no one cared to see him. Every evening, while his classmates played video games or scrolled through TikTok, Caleb waited patiently in the glowing halls of Skypeak Innovations, one of the most prestigious AI companies in the country. He didn't belong there, at least not officially. His mother, Vanessa, worked the night shift as a janitor, mopping the glossy marble floors and emptying the trash cans of multimillionaire executives who never once asked her name. To most, Caleb was just the janitor's kid. But while others ignored him, Caleb was quietly absorbing everything. Sitting in the corner of the employee break room, he'd study old whiteboards left scribbled with complex code. He'd peek into open laptops while someone went to grab coffee. He'd overhear technical discussions and debates, storing it all like a sponge. Unbeknownst to anyone, Caleb had already built mini algorithms on a second-hand laptop. He had solved problems in his mind that professionals couldn't. His notebooks, ragged and stained, were filled with code structures and system maps. He taught himself from online forums at the public library. He didn't need a classroom, he needed a chance. But in a world obsessed with resumes and degrees, no one noticed the brilliance hiding behind the quiet eyes of a janitor's son. Until one night when a billion-dollar problem collided with a boy no one saw coming. Skypeak Innovations was known as the Tesla of tech, their claim to fame. A revolutionary AI platform that could predict and optimize global supply chain operations. Something the U.S. government had just signed a $200 million contract for. But just weeks before launch, disaster struck. The algorithm crashed. Over and over again. It couldn't handle a high-volume, real-time logistics scenario critical to the government contract. Hundreds of top-tier engineers, some with PhDs from MIT and Stanford, were flown in. Code audits were performed, systems were rebooted, consultants were paid by the hour. But nothing worked. The deadline was days away. Panic set in. That Friday night, the offices stayed lit long past closing. Security buzzed with tension. Department heads barked orders, and the CAO himself paced the halls like a man watching his empire fall. Vanessa had been called in for an emergency cleaning shift, overtime. She moved between glass conference rooms, pushing her cart quietly. As the engineers argued, Caleb trailed behind, clutching his backpack and minding his business, or so they thought. But Caleb was listening. He wasn't just hearing buzzwords, he was mentally dissecting the very problem these high-paid minds couldn't fix. As the team debated line after line of failing code, a senior engineer accidentally left a screen unlocked. Caleb's eyes scanned it, his heart raced. He saw the flaw. Not a minor bug, a fundamental logic error buried in the algorithm's core. An inefficiency so basic it was hiding in plain sight. A shift in sequencing, a misread loop. He didn't hesitate. While no one was watching, Caleb picked up a dry erase marker and walked toward the whiteboard. The room was buzzing with stress. Dozens of senior engineers huddled around laptops, fingers flying, voices rising. The digital clock on the wall blinked 11:48 p.m. Another failed simulation, another dead end. Caleb walked up to the far side of the whiteboard, barely making a sound. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the marker, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. In his mind, the equation was already solved. He wasn't guessing. He knew. He erased the failed code structure written earlier and began rewriting it from scratch. Loop logic, resource allocation, memory redirection, line by line, he streamlined the operation. He introduced a recursive pattern no one had thought to apply, optimizing not just the output, but the way the system thought, 30 seconds. One of the junior developers turned around. His eyes widened. Hey, who's the kid? A senior executive, red-faced from stress, snapped his head around. Security! The room stopped. But before anyone moved the lead software, engineer stepped forward, staring hard at the whiteboard. His face turned pale. "Wait. Don't touch that," he said, voice cracking. Everyone went silent, fingers stopped typing. Eyes locked on the equations the kid had just written. This actually works," the engineer whispered. The door opened. CEO Daniel Merrick stepped in, expecting to walk into another hour of excuses. Instead, he saw a teenage boy in worn-out sneakers and a hoodie, standing at the whiteboard like he owned it. He looked at the kid, then at the stunned staff. "Who is this?" Caleb turned slowly. "I'm Vanessa's son," he said quietly. "The janitor." The room stayed frozen. And then the CEO smiled. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. The boardroom filled with a kind of silence that feels historic, like the moment just before lightning strikes. CEO Daniel Merrick stepped closer, eyes locked on the whiteboard. He wasn't a coder, but he understood structure. He recognized brilliance when he saw it, and this wasn't just good. It was genius. Who gave him access? Someone mumbled. Behind him. "He didn't have access," another engineer replied, still in awe. "He just saw it and fixed it." Daniel turned back to Caleb. "How long have you been here?" "Almost every night," Caleb replied. "Waiting for my mom." "I just listen, watch, learn." The CEO looked to the side and saw Vanessa standing in the hallway, mop still in her hand, eyes filled with shock and fear. She thought her son was in trouble. Instead, Merrick smiled at her, then looked back at Caleb. "Son," he said gently, "how would you like to work for us?" The room gasped. "But I don't have a degree," Caleb said, unsure. "You don't need one," Merrick said firmly. "You just did what 30 experts couldn't in 2 weeks." Then came the real surprise. In front of the entire team, Daniel walked over to Vanessa. "You gave us your son. That's more than we deserved. Starting today, you're no longer a janitor. You're our new head of facilities with full benefits, stock options, and a seat at the table." Vanessa burst into tears. A moment later, the room erupted in applause, not out of obligation, but out of awe. Caleb wasn't just a prodigy, he was a revelation. And the CEO's decision would soon go viral across the country. Caleb's life changed overnight. One minute, he was a quiet teenager waiting in the shadows. The next, he was being interviewed on national news outlets as the boy genius who solved a $200 million problem. But fame wasn't what Caleb cared about. Just weeks after his promotion, he walked back into the Sky Peak boardroom, not to work, but to ask for something. "I want to start a program," he told the CEO, "for kids like me, kids who are smart but overlooked. Kids who don't have access to computers or mentors, but who think like engineers." Daniel Merrick didn't hesitate. SkyPeak launched the Caleb Code Initiative, a nonprofit tech education program that brought coding workshops, laptops, and mentorship into underfunded schools and community centers across the country. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the first center in Atlanta, Caleb didn't speak about algorithms or AI, he spoke about his mom. "She cleaned your floors while I studied your code," he said to the audience of executives and community leaders. "She gave me the chance to sit quietly and listen, and that changed my life." Beside him, Vanessa stood proud, now in a tailored suit, her mop and uniform long gone. But her humility hadn't changed. Caleb didn't just become a tech innovator, he became a symbol of hidden genius, of overlooked potential, of the power of belief. And for every child sitting in silence, feeling unseen, his story sent a message loud and clear. It doesn't matter where you sit. It matters what you see and what you dare to believe about yourself. Don't judge a genius by the silence in the room. Sometimes brilliance is just waiting for someone to notice and believe.